Hey, everybody, we're glad to be back with you again. And today we're talking about pricing strategies for your coaching services. And David, this is one of the most common questions that any coach is going to ask, especially starting out or looking along kind of what's happening out in the market. Would you agree?
100%. I mean, we've gotten this question so many times that I can't even remotely attempt to get a
Right.
count on it because it's I'm creating a new course or I want to create a different kind of coaching program. Well, what should I charge?
Yeah.
And there's so many of those out there where people are just like, I have no idea what's a good fair rate.
Yeah.
And that's something that we kind of wanted to talk about today because that was
Mhm.
obviously an important question. It's obviously something that,
Yeah.
because it's pretty simple. If you charge too little, you're leaving a lot of money on the table, and
Right.
it's going to be hard to grow your business because you don't make enough to even justify investing in the business further. But if you charge too much, no one's going to buy.
Yeah.
So how do you find that sweet spot? So
Well, and I also have found too in my journey of kind of navigating this and experimenting with pricing is, for me, doing leadership coaching in an organization, what you start with is what you end up kind of being beholden to. It's hard to raise your prices, if you're going to work with somebody long term. So, for instance, I've had multiple contracts that rolled over from year to year for like 2 or 3 years and beyond. But what happens is that pricing that I started with has conditioned them of what to expect from me. So there's been times where I've kind of been stuck with maybe a lower price point than I would have wanted as I understood my pricing better with one organization. But the way I approached it was I stayed true to that, ballpark with them, but the next client, I made my adjustments because I felt like for me, it's an integrity issue. I wanted to honor what I had started, and I didn't want to jump from, you know, this price and like double it and then price myself out of the next, leg of the contract. So those are just things that I think a lot of it we have to learn as we go. And, I one year I remember with the company I'd been working with 2 or 3 years, and I had not done an increase in anything. So I think I just proposed like a 10% increase in my pricing, and they didn't balk at that. They understood because they do the same thing with their clients. But I had to position it in a way that, I haven't raised my prices in 2 years, and I need to increase, 10%. So this is a great topic because it really is. I think when people ask us this question, I think a lot of people they want other people to basically tell them what they should charge because then they feel like, well, somebody else told me what I should charge, and it's they were wrong, not I was wrong.
well, that is certainly a factor. I will not, then it's someone else to blame if the price is wrong. But
Well, and or the other side of it, right, is I just don't even, especially for new coaches, right? I don't even know where to begin. Like this is so foreign to some people who are like, I've never built my own programs. I've never priced myself before. So, you know, they just, it's just that innocent ignorance of just not lacking experience. I just don't know what I don't know.
right, and that's why today we're going to talk about like three things or three
Yeah.
models that you need to really incorporate and be thinking about when you do this process, when you go through like that exact question, like why I don't know what I
Mhm.
should charge. I don't know how valuable this is. I don't know what it is because here's the reality is like even within like the coaching and course creation and trainer space, one coach can come in and charge $1,000 and another coach can come in and charge $10,000.
Right.
And there is no like, a pack of soda is within a certain price range. And no matter if it's Coke, Pepsi, whatever, Sprite,
Right.
it's all going to be within a certain range. That is not how it works in this space. It is very, very different. And one of the primary reasons is the first thing that we're going to talk about, which is value-based
Mhm.
pricing. This is the first question you have to ask yourself when you're going through all this is like, what is the value that you're adding?
Mhm.
Now, that's why for some coaches, you go in and the value that you're adding to your client or to the organization that you're working with is small to medium.
Mhm.
And what do I mean by that? If you can look at and you can point to what are the impacts on the bottom line,
Right.
like if I show you, if I coach you through this process and I show you how to do this, what impact is that going to have on your bottom line in terms of, from an organization perspective, from their profit and loss? So if you can help an organization save a bunch of money, you're going to take them through a process. They're going to learn how to become more efficient. They're going to learn how to become more productive. They're going to learn how to become a better functioning team, all of that. And you can show all it takes is a few of this. And if these things move just a little bit, that's going to save you $100,000.
Right.
Wow, all of a sudden your value went up. Or if you're saying, yeah, this will probably save you $10,000. Okay, that's not as much of a value add. You're not doing as much. And the same thing goes with your courses. The same thing goes with one-on-one coaching. How big is the potential benefit from what you're doing? If you're coaching somebody on like, I need counseling, almost coaching to help me recover from some difficult times in my life. Well, the value of that is very high, but unless you really have something in there, a lot of these people are struggling to charge very much for their services because the bottom line impact is not as clear.
Yeah.
If somebody gets out of a they're coming out of a very difficult situation and they need someone to coach them through and get them back on track.
Yeah.
That's great. But you're more resetting someone from a negative to back to where they were. Yeah. Instead of pulling someone up and saying, I can take you from this spot to way up here. Yeah. And you're going to go from earning that much to earning that much. And unless you can quantify it,
yeah,
unless you can sit there and say, yes, there is a quantifiable difference that I can put on it. And this is something that a lot of coaches struggle with. Mm-hmm. And I tell them, especially, if you're looking at this, you need to be able to find ways to quantify what the benefits are that you do. The better you're able to quantify them and put hard numbers around that, and to be able to say, look, if we do this and we do this and we do this, and I'm going to coach you through this process, and I'm going to show you how, or even in my course, mm-hmm. I'm going to show you how to do all these things, how to make these adjustments, how to make these transitions. Then at the end, this is what's possible for you. Mm-hmm. This is what now you can do. Mm-hmm. And if we could tell that story and we could make that clear, that I know people who come in and help coach organizations through culture type things,
right?
Which that's a very soft issue. That's a very soft skill. It's not like I'm going to give you,
there's not hard facts or data to that,
right? You're not going to increase sales by making your sales team more effective at closing deals. Okay, but here's how you can do it: is you go into this and you can say, okay, let's look at your employee turnover rate. Mm-hmm. Okay, how many employees are you? How long do your employees typically stay at your organization? Okay, now what does it cost you every time to go out and go through the hiring process? The amount of time you got to pay your HR people and all of that to interview, to go through all these different things, to bring new people on. Yeah. How much do you have to spend on that? How much do you have to spend on training people? Because obviously when this new person starts your organization, they're not starting at 100%.
Right.
There's things that they have to learn. There's a learning curve. There's an onboarding type process that they have to go through. Mm-hmm. So you're not going to get 100% productivity out of them to start.
Right.
Because they're having to learn the job. Even if they have a lot of the skills, how it works in your organization is not always the same.
They have to acclimate, right?
They have to acclimate. And that's just life. Now, okay, so we have all of that. And so you can quantify some of those numbers. What if instead of having to replace employees every 6 to 9 months, the culture shifted to the point where people actually wanted to be here, mm-hmm. and they stuck around for 18 months.
Yeah.
Well, now we could start to quantify. You're only replacing people you're not having to replace people nearly as much.
Right.
So now we can cut all of your hiring expenses. We can cut all of your training expenses, because now these people, once they get in and doing their job, they're going to keep going.
Right.
And they're good at it. And now they know the job and your productivity goes up.
Yeah.
What about just overall productivity levels?
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting good productivity out of your employees? And if you can say, No, not really, because everyone hates being here. People just show up, punch the clock, and go home because this is nothing more than a job to them.
Right.
They're just trading hours for a paycheck. They don't have any heart in this whatsoever.
Yeah.
But if you can transform the culture
Mm-hmm.
and increase productivity by 10%,
Yeah.
and instead of getting this much done, now you're getting this plus 10% done because we now have a culture of people who actually are invested in the mission of the company.
Mm-hmm.
See how now all of a sudden I've quantified it.
Yeah.
Now I've taken these soft things that are hard to put a dollar amount on, and I have started putting dollar amounts on them. And
Right.
now you can say, all we got to do is this. We got to increase. All we got to do is get your employees to the point where they want to stick around and they want to be invested in the mission and they want to do these things. Your training costs are going to go down. Your HR costs are going to go down. Your productivity is going to go up. And now I can start to put numbers on these things, and I can show you how I can make $100,000 difference in your organization in a hurry.
And this is really a skill, David, that is important to learn, but it's also very foreign to a lot of people. And, one thing that I remember buying a course years ago, and it was a $2,000 course on productivity and time management, right?
Mhm.
And I really want to take it, but it was like that price point was really rubbing me at the same time, like, and I remember the guy who was selling it, something that he said that has always stuck with me is, what is it worth to you if you learn this and apply these things over the next 20, 30 years of your life?
Right.
So for him, it wasn't even so much of what kind of financial ROI was. He didn't go there and try to break down the numbers for people watching the sales presentation. But what it did for me was it cast a vision like, yeah, if I can become more productive and I learn these skills, because that's the thing, right? When we learn something, we get to carry those things forward. We build that into our life or our, daily operations for indefinitely. And that was my tipping point, right? Was I
Right.
was like, yeah, so $2,000 over the course of 20 years, divided that, right? Like
Right,
what?
but it created value in your mind.
Correct.
The value created went up.
Yeah.
And so the cost now is justifiable because the value creation in your mind is significantly higher than what you previously considered.
And I'll use another analogy that's completely unrelated to coaching or training. We were shopping for a new bed recently, a couple years ago now. Um, and the price tag on the bed we ended up buying was high, but we had had our previous version of that bed for 21 years. And so for me and my wife, what we were saying was, we know we like this type of bed,
Right. You got a lot of years out of
and
it.
we got a ton of years out of it.
Mhm.
Now, if we take that, even though if it's a higher price point, divide that by 20 again or
Mhm.
10 or whatever it might be, how does the sting of the price tag goes down
Right.
when you realize that over time the
Th-
value is there.
This thing could last for another 20 years.
Correct. And
Right.
so that's just one, like a simple thing that I start to think about sometimes is, over the course of X number of years, how much is this worth? I think where I love where you're going with this. I think we're one of the challenges, David, and maybe speak to this, is you mentioned that in a business scenario, and I've seen it, that what you said, and even a couple other ways to quantify with like leadership trait. Like if you have employee problems and disengagement, what's that, what's their hourly rate? What's it costing you beyond replacement even? But it's like, just that loss of productivity. What about life coaches that are helping people with, let's say it's traumatic experiences, or it's, somebody who's trying to help, rebuild hope and vision for people, for when it's very personal and there's not necessarily a financial bottom line that people can easily see in it. What is it? What I think it's kind of like it's vision casting of what your life can be.
I agree. So if you're like example coaching somebody on even, recovering from difficult things, it could be they had a divorce,
Mhm.
or yeah, and you're trying to like coach people back to a good place in life after they go through a nasty divorce or they go through whatever, a traumatic experience in their life. So what you have to do is you have to start quantifying the impacts. Okay. So you start going, okay, how's your productivity at work
Mm,
as a result of all this? Well, not good.
mhm,
Okay. So what are your odds of ever being promoted if things continue to go the way you are right now?
mm,
Not good.
yeah,
Because I'm not, my heart's not in work right now. My head is so consumed with all these problems. Okay, so if this is going to cost you promotions, this is going to potentially even cost you your job.
Right.
How much is that worth to you?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one factor. I'm now quantified like this because here's the thing. This is the problem, but we are human beings, and human beings don't ever live in a box.
Right.
Okay, we don't just have everything tied into this nice, neat little box and nothing spills out. So if I'm having a bad day at home, oh, then I go to work and everything's wonderful and happy again. Well,
Doesn't work like that.
If I'm having a bad day in one area of my life, typically that starts to bleed over into the other areas of your life. What about if this stuff starts causing you all sorts of stress and problems and you start having health problems?
Yeah.
Okay. How much are you willing to spend on
medical bills?
Because this is wrong, and you're so stressed out and you're so overwhelmed that you're going to have a heart attack, or you're going to end up with other health problems. What are you willing to face that reality? That could be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills.
Yeah.
What about, are you willing to, maybe you're having, maybe we reverse it. Maybe you're having problems at work where you're just, things are not going well. And now you come home and you're coming home in a bad, foul mood every day from your job.
Mm-hmm.
And what's that doing to your family, to your marriage, to your children? Are you willing to get divorced? Are you willing to pay all the legal fees, split up all your assets, take the home that you have and now have to go live in an apartment because you're now divorced and you can't afford the house anymore. And you have to only see your kids half the time. Or whatever it may be, and you're now having to be a single parent when you're with your kids.
Yeah,
I'm now quantifying that as well. So
because that's the emotional pain and cost, right?
Right, it is, but there's also financial pain in that too.
Sure, 100%.
I saw enough. my view on all of that is I saw enough people go through a divorce to realize that if you got problems, find a way to work them out with your spouse because. What I saw the people that went through the divorce that thought they were going to make their lives better by divorcing, man, they didn't.
Yeah.
They did not make their lives better. They just created an even bigger mess because now you have this person in your life who you are completely enemies with and having all these wars with endlessly. And the people, like for me as a friend of some of these guys who went through a divorce, I was like, okay, can we not talk about your ex-wife today? Like I just...
Yeah, because now they're renting space in their head all the time, right?
And the venom is just endless, and you just go, okay,
yeah.
Can we talk about, would that not be the topic today that we don't talk about her? Because,
but I think what you're bringing up here is really important because I think especially a lot of what we'll call life coaches, in a very broad sense, probably struggle with this topic as much or more than the people that are business coaches, right? Because to your point, if I know I can go into a company and I can figure out the hard data on a spreadsheet with somebody pretty quickly, what it's costing to replace employees or increase productivity or deal with lost productivity, those people know their numbers, right? But when it's dealing with the personal lives or the personal side of things, folks, listen to this conversation because what David has just said is so critical that, people don't tend to think that if I deal with this emotional issue or relational issue that I'm really struggling with, I can, like you said, have a better life experience in general. Yes, but also the impact of it on my career, on finances. I mean, I just think a lot of people don't go there because they don't think about that ripple effect far enough. And I think what you've done here, I think is a great model as well, David, is you're asking the questions. So you're basically helping the prospect in that case define for them, because that number might look different.
Cost.
Yeah, it might look different to me versus you versus somebody else when I think about actually the cost of it, because everybody's job pays differently or everybody's financial situation is differently or whatever, right? If it's a divorce, relational stuff and there's a pending divorce, if there's kids involved, if there's not kids involved, those types of things. So I think the important thing here is you're giving people right now a framework of asking the right questions for other people to not just define the value of your coaching program for a price point, but to define the value of the solution to their problem so that, you can sit there and say, all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, like this, if I don't fix this, it's going to cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars long-term with my job, with medical bills, with, alimony, whatever it may be. okay, now your program is $3,000
Right.
or whatever it is. Like
Right. You
that's
got to
that's
paint
the
the bigger
key,
picture is what you
right?
have to be able to do for the individual. And if you can do that, suddenly, because again, you have to understand the real cost of the problem.
Right.
And it's like an alcoholic that says, "Oh, my drinking's not a problem." Like, huh? What if I asked your coworkers if your drinking is a problem? What if I asked your
Yeah.
wife if your drinking is a problem? Would they give me the same answer?
Yeah.
So, how much of your life are you willing to blow up just to take another sip on the bottle?
Hmm.
And you can start to paint that picture, and you have to paint the picture of what's really going on here, because too often people see, oh, I just have this and I'll solve it myself, or I just have this and I'm going to take care of it. It's not that big of a deal. But they're not seeing the picture of what's really going on here. And if
Right.
you can fix that one problem, you've
Mhm.
not fixed you didn't fix one problem, you fixed about six,
Mhm.
because the ripple into all these, now all of a sudden they're not going on getting drunk all the time, and as a result they're being better, they're better at their jobs, so they become more productive, they can earn more money, their family situation turn around because they're no longer coming home you know inebriated all the time, and all these
Right.
things, they're just, their whole entire life starts going in a better direction, and so you've amplified it so much.
It's interesting. I actually had a conversation with a friend of mine. We were helping another local business person the other day, and at the end of like an hour, hour and 15 minutes, we kind of did this strategy session to help him kind of think through. He's starting a new business or within a business he already has, and he was just trying to figure out where do I go from here. And at the end of that hour or so, he said, "This right now is worth the cost of my, my fee, period." Like, and it was an annual fee, so it's like that 1 hour of was so valuable to him because he didn't have the thinking partners to help him really process and what was going on. That's what we provided for him, and that's amazing, right? And that's the kind of thing like you and I have talked about. What's that 10x value? If you can help somebody, in a business case, like if you can make 10 times what you pay for the program, is that worth it? And I've said this on this show probably, a long time ago, but when I buy a course or a coaching program that I'm a part of, I look at it and go, once I basically get my money back, then
Mhm.
I'm like, hey, like I feel
That's
like
worth
really
it.
great because I've at least returned that value. I don't even look at it as I have to get 10x value, but I want to just make sure that I get that value back. And so,
Mhm.
whether it's twice as much, whether it's 10 times as much, 100 times as much, for me, I'm like, I just want to make sure that when I'm making those buying decisions, that I'm going to get that return to at least pay for what I've just invested. And I think a lot of people think that, like, as long as I feel like I'm getting my money's worth of
Mhm.
value, it's going to make a big difference. And so, so that's the value side of this. There's also another way a pricing model that you want to jump into today as well.
Yeah, this one's a little more basic, but it really is just like, you got to know your costs.
Hmm.
And so when you're looking at your pricing, one of the things is like the cost-based pricing. You got to know, like, and have an understanding of your business. Like, what does it actually cost me to produce this thing?
Hmm.
And because in like, if you're doing courses, the there's an upfront cost
Hmm.
to create all the content, to create all the course work, to create a website that holds all the coursework, to create all the marketing materials, and maybe you have to, and then funnels and everything, and you may have to be paying somebody to help you get all that done. And so there's an upfront cost, but then the incremental cost is very little. You don't have to do a lot to sell another course and to bring another person in, but you know to know I have costs up front, and so you kind of have to know I have to sell about this many to get there. Now, in your coaching, it's about your time. How
Hmm.
much time, what is my time worth, and how many hours is this going to take me? Because I remember, doing some speaking gigs first on, and in the early days, and very small little organization paid me $500 to come speak for the day, and I thought, this is great, I love it, this is fantastic, I was excited, someone actually was paying me $500 to speak
Right.
this little school for the day. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go and do it. Well, little did I know, when I did the math and of all the time
Your
hours I
hourly
put
rate of preparing.
to prepare, pull all the materials together, get it all done, and then go in, and all the hours I spent, I went, huh, I didn't think this through very clearly, did I? But I was very, very early days.
Sure, you don't think about it.
Many, many
You're
years.
thinking about, well, what you're thinking about, right, was showing up and doing the presentation.
Right.
You weren't thinking about everything to get there and be ready.
And by the time you added it all in and you knew how much time you had spent, you're like, wow, that hourly rate really wasn't all that great, was it? But
Well, if you think about that, like, and you're right, this is what happens a lot of times. People think, well, surgeons make so much money for a surgery. Do you know how much money and time they've spent
right,
for 10 years or decades to
right,
get
that's
to do that surgery so that you don't die on the table?
right. Well, it's not the hour that they spent with you in the surgery. It's the 20 years of training that led up to them being
Correct.
that skillful to be able to do that surgery in an hour.
Yeah.
That's how that's working. So, yeah, this one's pretty simple. You got to know your costs and you got to know what do you need for a profit margin on there. Like,
Yeah.
especially if you're doing hourly, how much is my time worth? How much do I really need to get paid hourly for this to make sense?
Mhm.
And if the amount of hours, you got to be able to understand how many hours am I going to have to invest versus the payoff, and is that enough?
Yeah.
Is that worth my time? Because it's very easy to let the hours put in bleed
Right.
and get more and more and more, and suddenly you're going, okay, this 10-hour project just turned into 25, and
Yeah.
now I'm not making nearly the kind of money. So that's point number 2. And then point number 3 is a market-based pricing model, where this is where you got to do some research. And no matter who you are, there is somebody else out there doing something semi-similar to what you're doing.
Right.
And you just need to be able to know, like, okay, who are these people and what are they doing? And
Yeah.
what are they offering and what are they charging? And then you got to be able to discern, like, am I competitive with these people? Am I in the ballpark? Now, maybe you are charging a little bit more than they are, but then look at what they're offering and say, oh, yeah, but they don't offer this, 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 and this.
Sure.
So by the time I add all those things in there, I'm still way cheaper. I'm still much more valuable than
Yeah.
what they are, because I'm offering so much more per client to do all these things. And anyway, so you got to be able to know, because your customers are eventually going to find the other offers.
Yeah.
And they're going to go, well, shoot, instead of spending this much with you, I could spend and get the exact same thing with these people over here and
Right.
get the same outcome.
Yep.
Maybe it won't be the exact same service, but it'll be a similar outcome, but it's going to save me $1,000. Well,
Right.
I'm going to go with them.
Yeah. Then it's a commodity, right? And a
Right.
race to the bottom.
Right. So a good pricing model, a good way of approaching this incorporates all 3 of the things that we've talked about so far. You really need to think about what, primarily it is the value add, which is obviously what we spent the most time on. But you got to think about, what value am I adding in someone's life or some organization's life, and quantify it.
Yeah.
And be able to come up with, look, if we solve this, how is your life going to look different? You got to be able to paint that before and after state. Know your costs and how much time it's going to take to do this, and how much your time is worth for it to make it be worthwhile. And then what is the market doing? Because it is possible that there's going to be a lot of big players in the market who are going to offer this thing doggone cheap. And you're going to look at it and go, there's no way I can do this, because it's not worth my time. And the market is so pressed down on the prices that it's what you said, it's a commodity.
Yeah.
And now it's not worth it anymore. It's just not even worth going there.
Yeah. And I feel bad for people that are in commoditized businesses. Like, I have friends who are insurance agents, for instance, and it's like the industry has kind of capped their potential, despite them being a great agent or having a great brokerage or whatever. It's like, I sit there and I think it's now granted, for them, it's about volume, right? They have to have a ton of customers, and they're just chasing their tails a lot of times trying to grow that book of business, because they can't increase. I feel like that's an advantage that we as coaches do have when we position ourselves well. We have a true differentiation. And people are ultimately buying us as coaches. They're buying us as, do I trust you? Are you somebody that has the experience or has the knowledge, can really help me? And I think, folks, as you go about this goes back to that value point that we talked about primarily here is, I was actually talking to David, and this was something, it's a salesman I talked to yesterday in the heating and cooling industry. And he said, what people don't think about when they see the price tag of a new system in their home is they're, the hard costs of the overhead of the business and what, so people were like, well, why is that unit so expensive? And he's like, well, yeah, but you're paying for the installation, not just the equipment, but this installer, their time, their experience, all these things. He also talked about when I can go in, he's like, because he's been at it a long time. He's like, I go in and I fix a problem in 10 minutes. And they're like, well, that was awful quick. Why am I paying you X dollars? And he's like, well, would you rather have somebody be here for 3 hours trying to figure it out and maybe have an answer? Or do you want me to be the expert so a lot of it, even no matter what industry you're in, right? Like the coaching, we have to do this work that you're talking about, because I think we're kind of used to it in other sectors that kind of think about this. But when you're starting your own coaching business, running it and trying to grow it, we don't understand our value early on as much as we do down the road. That's okay. Maybe somebody says, you know what, I'm going to start my coaching at $50 a session. You know what? That sounds ridiculously low right now to me and to you,
Right.
but that may seem really high for somebody who's been making $20 an hour. And
Right.
now all of a sudden I'm going to make $50 an hour.
Right.
Versus now it's 250, now it's 500, now it's 1,000. That just blows people's mind when you're, especially early on, because maybe this is like just a totally new world you're in. And so that, and I've actually had coaches in the past that have helped me not just go from 50 to $60, but they're like, you need to at least double it. So there's been times where it was like, that was a big stretch. Like, okay, I'm going to normally charge 250 for a session. I'm going to charge 500. Wow. That's a mental hurdle I've got to get over.
I agree.
Because people that are more experienced understand that the value I'm going to be able to bring to those clients is worth that. But we have to understand that value too, to get started. So, why don't you talk about some pricing strategies, real quickly here, after kind of based on these models?
Right. Well, once you get all that figured out and you kind of understand the big picture, you can do some like variations within what you're doing. And one of those is you can do a tiered. You can then look at what you're offering and even put it in tiers. So like we've done this with DLG. Like if you want to come in to Design Launch Grow and you don't really feel like you just need the roadmaps, you need the pathway that's going to lead you exactly down how to do all these things, and you're a self-starter, you can do that for $30 a month.
Right.
For very, very cheaply. But if you're a person who wants coaching, who wants someone to like, hey, it'd be really helpful if I could ask some questions, if I could really be on here and somebody could tell me, oh, okay, no, you shouldn't do it that way, you should do it this way, or here's some ideas and get coaching. Well, then that's $147 a month. So it's you can tier your services. You could even say, okay, for this, it's this, for that tier,
Yep.
and you can come up with that. Another way of doing it is hourly, an hourly rate versus a package rate. Like here's what it would be for me to do this per hour, or here I'll provide these 5 services as an entire package. Or even on coaching, you can do like I'll do $250 an hour, or you can do 5 sessions for $1,000. So you save a little bit, but now you're actually paying for 5 sessions, and I can do packages on there. And you can start combining things. So you could start taking things like I'm gonna put a little coach or a course with this plus some coaching, or I can like start mixing and matching some of my services together and come up with new combinations.
Right.
Like, well, a lot of my clients really just need this, so I'm going to create a new combination out of what I've done in the past.
Yeah.
And be able to do all those things. And then you could even do a promotion, like, to different things on some of this stuff to promote a certain type of thing. So once you get the base set for all what you're doing in your business, now you could even get more creative by how you're combining and packaging things to even come up with other pricing strategies to try and incentivize people to take certain actions and to do that, or to just kind of promote certain things. So that's
really good. I mean, I think, and we've talked in other episodes about the various ways you can operate coaching, with whether it's a monthly recurring membership, model, whether it's a short-term 6 to 12 week group coaching program at a certain price point, whether it's your one-on-one coaching. So like you're saying here, is there's a variety of ways to position this and reach people at different entry points, or different kind of, I'll say, appetites for what they want to spend or feel like they can afford. The other thing that just jumped out at me as you're talking too is as you package things and it's not based on time, you're in so much of a better position. So even, this is something I had to learn, David. I used to promote, well, a 60-minute coaching call. Well, what if it only takes me 25 minutes to help that person? Well, then what's the other 35 minutes? Just keeping them on the Zoom call doesn't help them any more than the 25, right? So even saying things like, session price versus time-based price
Right.
is even something I've had to kind of grow into and understand myself, because, if I needs an hour, it needs an hour, but if it needs 20 minutes, the quicker. It's kind of like anything. Like, do we all want to go to the doctor's office and pay an hourly rate and sit in the doctor's office for an hour if he can give us a prescription or help us figure out what's going on in 10 minutes?
Right.
None of us want to do that, right? So it's being the expert as a coach. Sometimes it's very quick, sometimes it takes a little more time, but you can position yourself on sessions or program rates versus making it so time bound, which is what we default to because that's what our business world really has run on for so long. Also, let's talk about adapting to changing market conditions to kind of wrap up, because things do change over time.
Yeah, and this is something to just kind of throw in a few things here to kind of as we wrap things up. It's just you got to always pay attention, because sometimes people can get locked in. Well, this is my price. It's been working. It's been good. And then one day you're waking up, you're like, I'm having a harder time getting clients. This isn't going as well as it used to. And my clients are now not coming on as like they used to for a long time. Things have shifted. Well, market conditions change.
Yeah.
And things shift. There may be more competitors out there now. Like we had that in the last business where we created this publishing company that was a coaching / publishing company for authors. When we first started doing it, we were about the only game in town doing the things the way we were doing it. By the time several years later, a lot of people had caught notice of what we were doing, and there was other options out there, and we had increased competition in there, because people are going to figure out, hey, these guys have a great thing going. I want a part of that. And so they start setting up their own little offers in there. So all of a sudden your customers are looking at it going, well, I could go with you, but I could go with you or that person.
Right.
So you need to be aware of the other options that are starting to pop up around you. Technological advances. There may be an easier way to do this because of AI or because of different technology that suddenly gets developed. And your way may start to become a bit dated.
Yeah.
Like, I used to do it this way. Well, yeah, but there's now actually an easier way of doing that. And I don't have to pay you for that anymore. There's been a technology breakthrough that allows me to get it done a lot faster. Or, sometimes your clients' needs shift because of the market conditions shifting. Well, I don't need that anymore. I just need this. And so people, were in the past where they would be hiring you to do this one type of thing. They're now going, yeah, that's not really as important to me anymore. Now I just need this. And so your clients' needs have shifted. So you need to be aware. You need to pay attention, and you need to be listening to your clients. You need to be aware of the landscape. So the things that you're offering shift appropriately, because you look at stores like Target stores like Kmart and Sears.
Yeah.
They didn't shift with the marketplace, and they went from behemoths.
Right. They were the game in town.
They were the game in town. They were the largest department stores in America, and everybody went there for a lot of years. But we all know they didn't shift.
Yep.
The market conditions shift. The customer's taste shifted.
Yep.
A lot of things, the needs of the customers had shifted, and they, for whatever reason, decided, nope, we're staying right here. And
Blockbuster versus Netflix, right? Like same story. I mean, it's
point to me where those stores are now.
Yeah.
Which, when in their heyday, they were everywhere.
Right.
And now they're nowhere. And so you have to have your awareness there to pay attention to your customers. What do they really need? Where are their needs shifting to? Because they will over time. And you can't just stay locked into one place.
No, that's really good. I was actually, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about even like email service providers. I've seen the shifts in, my time in business. Of my first email service provider was a free MailChimp account, right? Like that was all I had. That's all I needed. I thought, over time, I ended up switching over to ConvertKit. They have landing pages. They have automated sequences, like I liked a lot better. Well, guess what happened? I started to notice, MailChimp started to make some modifications to compete with ConvertKit, and then Active Campaigns out there. And there's all these other different ones out there because once again, when you're in an innovative industry, you may start and be the only game in town, like you said, the publishing program, right? If it's the only option out there, then guess what? You can charge a premium, and you can
Right.
you're the person or the team that's going to bring people in. But when other competitors start, it's that red ocean, blue ocean thing that happens, and it happens all the time, right? You look at when Apple created the iPhone, they were the first, and they innovated, basically off of BlackBerry. They made BlackBerry, who had been the behemoth at the time, kind of fade away. But again, guess what? Samsung starts to compete with Apple, and all different companies start to compete with each other. So you can be on that front edge, and at times, but you also have to realize that if it's successful, people do start to replicate or try to do their own thing, right?
And that affects what you can charge.
Correct.
And you need to understand that maybe people aren't going to pay the premium price for the full service product anymore because they're looking at it going, well, I only really need this piece, so I can get away with just paying for that piece.
Yeah.
And again, that affects your pricing. That affects how you're combining and what your offers are.
Yep.
And you need to have all that understood and have your finger on the pulse of what people really want and need, or you're going to start to go, become a dinosaur in your space.
Yeah. Well, folks, I hope this has been helpful for you. I know it's, my brain starts buzzing about different ideas and comparisons as you're talking about this today, David, because it is so true. It's not something that's a one-time and done decision. It's an ongoing process of evaluation and keeping an eye on the market, or understand your value. Like I said, the longer I've gone doing what I do with leadership training, the more value I know I can bring to a team, and the more I've invested in myself, the more value I bring to a client, that can command higher fees. And at the same time, you also have to understand what people are used to paying, how they're seeing things. And I love, folks, rewind the section and listen to the part about how to just ask the right questions to help people understand what is the value to them, because from person to person, organization to organization, certain things they're not all equal, right? Like the cost of the employee retention is going to be different from place to place, or the cost of, like you said, Dave, the relational cost, or, with a divorce situation, relational issues. Those things, they vary to people, but how you position your program, your product, for your coaching, is a lot dependent on how you help people understand what the true cost to them is for their pain to be resolved, or to not be resolved, I guess, really, because you provide that solution. So I hope this is something that you'll just kind of dig into, folks, and really think about, because it is something that we get questions about a lot. It's something that I see it a lot, David. People are just curious or wondering and confused about this. So if you need help with this, guys, come to designlaunchgrow.com. Check out our coaching and training program. Like David said, we have a $30 option if you just want like the course content for the roadmaps and, the action steps to take and how to build a business, to grow that business. But if you need that, that coaching and that hand holding help that we can provide on a weekly coaching call, that's the $147 price that you can jump in right away today as well. So check that out, designlaunchgrow.com. We'd love to help you out. Love to see your business grow and really reach and impact a lot of lives. So take care, and we'll see you soon.